Welcome to the CS IT Experts Online Forum. In this short video, I will discuss about exception handling mainly in Java and also in C Sharp. So the main topics are errors versus exceptions, exception handling in real life, exception handler class hierarchy, try class, and finally blocks, unchecked and checked exceptions, throw and throws, throw versus throws keyword, finally, and finalizer keywords, and user defined exceptions, exception uh, with complete programs. So I will discuss these topics with some complete programs. So I have a lot of things to discuss. So let us get started. So exception. So what is an exception? An exception is an indication of a problem that occurs during a program's execution. That means an exception is an error that happens in program's runtime or execution time. So hmm, exception handling enables application to resolve these exceptions. So exception handling enables to develop clear, robust, and more fault-tolerant programs. Exception handling helps improve a program's fault tolerance. So let us discuss about this in a real-life situation. So think about a highway. So if this highway has only single lane in each direction, so then for instance, for some reason, if this large vehicle stops or it uh, gets an accident, then what will happen? So this lane will be blocked, and once this lane will be blocked, so for alternative way that other vehicles coming in the same direction, they have to use alternative ways. So alternative routes, that means they have to stop and they have to be careful and they have to use so other lane. So this is really a problem. It may cause a lot of traffic in this highway. So in order to this kind of issues, so in real life highways, so you see that there are multiple lanes. There are multiple lanes, one for some for incoming and some for outgoing. So in these lanes, in this highway, if there is an accident happen on this lane, then alternatively vehicles will use other lanes. Okay, so uh, in this way, some exceptions, that means some accidents can be accidents uh, traffic can be resolved. Okay, and also in real life and modern highways, you will see there is another lane that is called emergency lane. So that lanes will always be kept free, and this lane will be kept free for the police officers and emergency vehicles like ambulance use in case there is an accident. So this is how in real life exceptions or accidents exceptions are handled. So same thing in our program. So exceptions are handled mainly using some exception handler classes. So and uh, we will discuss this in this class. So mainly in this video I will discuss the programs uh, from my book Java programming A to G book, Java programming A to G, and I will discuss mainly in chapter 15, maybe chapter 15. So if you go through this book source code, and then actually if you go to my my ICTR Guru mm, GitHub account, and then you will see a repository. It is called Java Programming A to G, this repository. And if you clone this repository or download this repository, then you will be able to get a complete project. Actually, this project is here. Actually, this is my book source code, and then on chapter 15, actually chapter 15 is about I'm sorry, chapter 14 is about exception handling. So I'm sorry, so I will discuss about chapter 14, so primarily chapter 14 of this book, exception handling. So if you know how to clone a project from GitHub and then import in Eclipse, then you're fine. Otherwise, if you need help, so then you can go to my CS IT Experts YouTube channel, and on this YouTube channel you will see that I have some videos uploaded in about Git and GitHub related videos. There is a playlist called Git and GitHub related videos. So if you watch some of these videos, then you will be able to install Git, and you will be able to create your own GitHub account, and you will be able to clone this project and import this project into your Eclipse. So if you want to watch these videos in Bangla language, then go to my ICTR Guru YouTube channel, and here you will see I have many playlists over here, and one of the playlists I have about Git and GitHub related videos. These are mainly Bengali videos. You can watch these videos. Okay, so once you get this, or also I have this project in my another repository, CSIT at experts GitHub account, and you will see if you go to my CSIT at experts uh, GitHub account, then you will see my one of the repositories I have here about exception handling. So if you clone this project, and that will do. So the same thing. So all of my projects for this are here. So either you go please chapter 14, or it is exception handling package. Okay, so let's get again started. So what we are discussing, so we are discussing about a program. So in real life situation, for instance, this is a program. So apparently this program does not have any error. Okay, but while you run this program, it will create an exception. So actually an exception is an error that will occur or may occur
It's 1 o'clock.
runtime. Okay, for instance, this is the program that I was discussing over there. So let me make this font larger. So this program apparently does not have any issue or any uh, error. So actually an error means if I do a mistake in writing or composing something, then it will show me an error message during my compile time. For instance, if I put XX, then it will show me an error. An error message will be indicated by a cross. Okay, it shows that XS cannot be resolved as to a variable. That means I do not have any variable named XX. So then it is showing me a cross, and it is showing me a cross over here, red bar. So actually this is a compile time error. So we can handle compile time error easily, and handling compile time error in program or application is cost efficient and easily, this because this can be seen ahead of time, and this must be resolved in order to run the program or application. But sometime it may happen that you apparently will not see any issue in your compile time, but your program will or may or might create some issue in runtime. So those kind of runtime issues are called exceptions, that are unexpected errors. So for instance, let us see we see that we do not have any uh, compile time errors in this program, but if we want to run this program, how can I run this program? So go to run menu and then click here, then you'll see that it will create an exception. What is the exception about? It says the division by 0. Where is that coming from? Actually here, if you see that I have x equal to 5 and y equal to 10, z equal to 15. So whatever I'm doing here, I'm getting in d equal to z divided by x y minus 2x. So by y equal to 10, then y minus 2x will be 0. So actually this part will be 0. So then it will create an exception here. It's called division by 0. Makes a division by 0 exception it will create. So once it will create an exception on this line, so the line after this line will not be executed. That means whatever lines I will have or statements I will have after the line that might create an exception will not be executed. So that means my program will be terminated here at this point. So we do not expect that, right? For instance, exception happens mainly in runtime, and for instance, we have seen here that is a division by 0 exception over here. Some other kinds of exception may happen. For instance, if we are going to read some data from a database file, but if the file does not exist, so then that will create an exception. Okay, so sometimes we do not know ahead of time that this statement or this kind of statement may create an exception. So so in that situation we need to handle these lines of code so wisely, so that we can resolve this line, and after resolving this line the remaining statements of your programs can run smoothly. So actually exception handling, what is the intention of exception handling? To accept or catch the exception and handle it, and then or either bypass it or resolve this issue and then keep continuation of the program execution so that the next or remaining statements can execute smoothly. Okay, so in Java and C Sharp and C++, in most of the programming languages, okay, exceptions are handled using some, okay, exception handler classes. Okay, so some exception handler. So there are several kinds of exceptions. Okay, we will see this soon. For instance, the arithmetic exception we have just seen, that is division by 0, that will be null pointer exceptions, input mismatch exception, number format exception, area out of bound exception. For instance, the null point exception, it may happen. For instance, if you are going to find a length of a substring, but what happens if the substring does not exist or the string does not exist? So then the string will be null, so but you cannot find a length of a null string. So then at that situation a null pointer exception will happen. And another is that, for instance, if you have an array and if you are traversing the elements of the array, but somehow you have gone through uh, out of boundary. So if you pass the length of your array, so that may create an array index out of boundary exception. So you will see this in program a lot. In that situation you have to handle these statements. So how exceptions are handled. So exceptions are handled, for instance, using try and catch block. So this is a pseudocode for exception handling. For instance, the code is straightforward. For instance, perform a task, and if the preceding task does not execute correctly, that means if the task creates an exception, perform an error processing. How to write some code? How do you will you handle those errors? And then uh, go to the next task. Okay, if the task uh, did not execute correctly, then perform error processing for this task. Okay, and go to the next task. This is the way. So in this pseudocode, we begin by performing a task, then we test whether a task executed correctly. If not, then we perform error processing, that means that we'll do in catch block. So soon we will go to exception handling. So actually, exception handling enables programmer to remove error handling code from the main line of the program execution. So we will see this exception handling techniques soon. Okay, so in Java, this is the class hierarchy of exception classes. So So actually we know that in Java.lang packages, object class is the greatest parent class, and then it has some subclasses, throwables and errors, and other side exceptions, runtime exceptions, and other exceptions. Let us go through in depth of this. So in depth, so you see that there are more other classes. For instance, object is the top level, greatest parent class, and then throwable, and then error class. It has some other subclasses and then exception classes, and it has runtime exceptions, IO exceptions. Among runtime exceptions, there are illegal argument exception, out of bound exceptions, arithmetic exceptions, array index out of exceptions, and among IO exceptions there are file not found exception, like this. Okay, so in C sharp almost there is a same similar exception class hierarchy in .NET libraries. So for instance, this is exception, and the next application exception, system exception. So there are more other subclasses. Okay. So in Java and in C sharp, we put our exception. So let me do. See, we put our code that might generate an exception within the try block, and within a catch block, what we do, we put some code in order to recover from the exception, and this catch block catch an exception according to its exception type. So you will see that voila is most of the time the catch statement will have an argument of an exception class type argument, and based on that exception type, so we will handle the exception. We'll catch the exception and handle the exception. So sometimes you may have a catch block without any specific exception type, then that might be able to catch all kind of exceptions, but that is not a good idea. Okay, so you can have multiple class statements. So when an exception occurs in the try block, a corresponding catch block catches the exceptions and handles it. So if we have multiple catch statement, we'll see that later, and at least you need one catch statement. For instance, here there are two catch statements. The first catch statement is file not found exception type. it will catch file not found exception, and the second it will catch all exceptions times. Okay, and there is a finally block. Finally block, it mostly is used to perform some task frequently request and releases resources dynamically related tasks. Actually, finally block executes no matter if an exception happens or if it does not happen. Finally block always executes. So finally blocks is like the default block that always executes whether no matter if an exception happen or if it does not happen. So for instance, the finally block will be executed most of the time. For instance, if you need to close a file or close a database, that codes are put in within the finally block that that will be happen. So for instance, if we see if an exception either happens or if it does not happen, then still the finally block will be executed. So here there is another code snippet like try block. There will be one try block, and we will put the code that might generate an exception within the try block, and we will have multiple case statements. The case statement is the case statement will be different based on its exception type, and there will be a finally block. Okay, the finally block is followed. It follows the previous try case, and you cannot have any statement within a try between a try and case block. So you cannot have any orphan codes statement here within here. So all codes needs to be put in try and case blocks. Okay, so again here in our real life situation, so this is the finally block. Is for instance the emergency lane is the finally block. So that means if an exception happens or not happens, this finally block will always be kept free. Okay, and for instance each of the lanes are here or is one of the catch blocks. Okay, and what is the is try block? Try block is if an accident happen. So if an accident happen on this lane, that this lane will be blocked or temporarily it will be closed, and alternate blocks will be alternative lanes will be used. So there is a reminder that it is not a good idea to put all of your codes within a try block. That is not a good idea. So actually we need to put the codes that only that situation of the code that will handle that will make cause an exception. So let us go through this, discuss this with a real complete program that we were discussing a few minutes ago. Okay, so this is the program. So for instance, we have seen that this program did not have any error, but it creates an exception during runtime. So then we need to handle this exception, okay, wisely, so that this error can be resolved, exception can be resolved, and after resolving this exception, the other lines, the remaining lines, executes. So let us go to the next program. My book. So you see that it has, for instance, it has another program of that has another that may create another kind of exception. Okay, okay. So for instance, let me run this program. Actually, I wanted to run the other program. I don't need to go through this. Let me go through the fourth program. So this is the program that has the number four program. See the class name I have here, Z14 underscore 04. That means my books program code chapter 14 and program number 4. So but in general you should not write your programs, name your class like this way, but I wrote this way in order to serial write my course, or put my code in serial. Okay, for instance, this is the line of the code. Okay, so this is the line of the code that generate exceptions, right? So what I have done, so this is the technique that we put this code within a try block and use a catch block just immediate after the try block. No other statement will be in between the try and catch block. Okay, and put some statement or measures that you want to do, okay, if this exception happens. Okay, and then this catch block will handles the exceptions either by showing you an error message or by giving you a reminder or doing something else, and after that this block or program will be executed. Okay, so for instance, now if I run this program, what will happen? So if I run this program, what will happen? You see, okay, so it is running. So for instance, the value of d is undetermined. It is showing me this error message, and division by 0 error, it is showing me just this error message. And so after this catch statements execution, the program it goes, program flow goes to this statement. That means then it runs. So okay, so if we put a break statement over here, and we, instead of running the complete program, so how about if we debug this program? We can see what happens actually if we let us debug this program from here. Okay, okay, just double click here to get a breakpoint, and then run and debug this program. Okay, so it is showing me there's a debugger perspective is recommended. Since I'm doing so, it wants to switch to my debugger perspective. So let me select switch, and then okay, so here I am on this statement. So here I see that x equal to is sorry, if I go to the next statement, so debug, if I go to step into or step over, okay, let me go to step over. So it is coming in this statement here. Let us see if we see what values we have. If we hover my mouse over here on x or x, then it will show me x equal to 5, and they will show me y equal to 10, and it is showing me my z value will be, see, you also can see this value here on this side, x equal to 5, y equal to 10, and z equal to 15. Now if I press F6, then it will take me to the next step. Okay, what will be the next step? Okay, F6, then it will take me to this step. Okay, so at this point you see that I have my, okay, so d value. What is my d value? Okay, and then if I press F6 again, so then it is coming to this statement, and if I press F6 again, you see here at this point it is showing my e value, is showing, it says arithmetic exception. It is arithmetic exception type object, and if I press F6 again, and then this line was print, the previous line it was printed here, and if I press F6 again, so then it was printing here, and then now it has come to this line. Okay, and then if I press F6 again, then it has come here, and if I press again F6, then it's almost at the end. Okay, so my program terminates now. Okay, so now whatever we have done, what we have done over here, so since we have an exception on this line, so we have just put y minus instead of 2x, y put y minus 2x. So this statement, actually we could place this statement, instead of here we could put this statement here. Okay, so then if we put this statement over here, so this is our resolution. Okay, this is our solution, that instead of dividing g by y minus 2x, just we are alternatively so if we see that an exception happened, then we are alternatively dividing g by y minus x. And in this case, if we run this program, then it will not create an issue. So actually this is the solution, that how do we resolve an exception, because exception happens here, and then since it made some exceptions, so we had made some changes in this statement, for instance, or anything we can do. Okay, so that whatever we have done here, have done here, we use a try block, and within the try block we put the statement that might cause an exception, and we use a catch statement, and we caught the exception, and then we change the statement that created the exception, and then my program is fine. And after this statement, now we see that our this statement was able to execute. So this is a technique how to handle exceptions. Okay, so now if you let me go back to perceptions in Java. Perceptions, perspectives, regular perspective. Okay, so now if you go through the other programs, for instance 5, then if you see that we have other alternatives OS, for instance these, and then other, we have some other programs in the, we have more discussion of this program. Okay, so now go to the slide. Okay, so there are two kinds of exceptions mainly in Java that are called unchecked exceptions and checked exceptions. Unchecked exceptions are those that are the subclasses of error and runtime exceptions. So it is not mandatory to use try and catch block to handle this kind of exception, because for instance the error message, if you see an error, then you see that error at your compile time, so you must resolve this. Okay, you must need to resolve this. So this is why it says error time in order to run your program. And cached exception are all other kinds of exception. Codes that might generate a checked exception must be put within a try block, and the method must acknowledge that the exception may occur by using a throws clause in the method header. So we will discuss throws clause soon. Okay, otherwise the compiler will generate an error. Okay, so let's in depth. So actually whatever we have seen, that within this throwable class, the errors, all exception, and in this error class are unchecked exception, and runtime exceptions and error exceptions are unchecked exception, and all other exceptions like IO exception, illegal access exception, class not found exception, these are checked exceptions. Okay, this needs to be checked, or this needs to be handled using throws clause. We will know this one. Okay, so if this is a good interview question, what is a checked versus unchecked exception? Okay, so pause this video for a few seconds, and then try to understand these points for checked and unchecked, checked versus unchecked exceptions, I found this on YouTube, on Google search, on Google's on the internet. So you can find this kind of good resources on the internet. Okay, so that what we are discussing in software engineering tips: write code that catch and handle exceptions generated by invalid user input, while I try to write code that is user friendly. Okay, so these are the simple guideline for software engineering tips. Okay, so now we will discuss about designing our own exception. That means our user defined exception. We will go through this later soon. Okay, we will discuss how to develop our own exceptions. Yeah. Okay, let me see what. Okay, so as we are discussing, we have uh, we need to throws unchecked exceptions, right? We need to use throws checked exception. We will discuss that, but there is another keyword that is called throw, is used to throw an exception. Okay, throw an exception if your code or method generate an exception, then you need to throw that exception to its caller method. In order to throw an exception, we use throw keyword. Okay, throw keyword is used within a method, but throws keyword is used in the method signature or header line. Okay, and there is a good interview question: what is the final what is difference between final, finally, and finalize keyword? As you know, final is used to create a constant. Okay, for instance, we use in Java, we use static final. For instance, x equal to 5. For instance, for this case, if you are sorry, if you are making x equal to 5 as a constant, then through the program execution time you cannot change the value of x. In that case, we use the final keyword, and finally is a block that we have seen. We use finally block with a try and catch block. Okay, also final keyword prevents method overriding, and final keywords in class prevents inheritance. These are the remainder. So if you do a Google search like this that I did, you will find the difference between final, finally, and finalize keyword. So please pause this video for a minute and try to understand the difference between final, finally, and finalize keywords. There is another good resource I found on the internet. Okay, so this is the actually finally block is the block that we call it as an emergency lane. Okay, so let's go back to our program and see that how if I have a program to use uh, to demonstrate other examples. For instance, in these programs you see that I have multiple case statements. One of these, another case statement, and another case statement, 3 case statements followed by okay, for only one try block. So you can have a try block and you need at least one try case statement, and also you can have multiple case statements. Okay, then what is this program? And it's same thing. It shows that you can have a try block within another try block or within another case block. So that means it is called, this is inner try case block. Within this try case block, we may also use this try case within another case block. I have not done that, but you can try that. Okay, so that means we can use a try catch block within an outer try block. This example shows that one, and let me show what I have got in this one. Okay, so it has finally blocks. It has finally block. Okay, so and this is the good thing that I have an example of using throw statement. Okay, so throw statement is used within a method or within a try block, maybe try block. Okay, in order to throw an exception. Okay, for instance, throw is used within a within a method. This is within a method within a try block. Okay, to throw an exception. So what it will throw an exception. Where it will throw, to whom it will throw that this exception, to the caller of this method. So who we will call this method. For instance, the demo is a method, static method. We are calling this static method within main. So this this demo this demo method will, okay, throw an exception to the main method. Okay, so let us try to write this demo as like this way. Okay, so actually instead of writing this, instead of putting this demo here like this way, actually shift command I want to comment it out for now. Okay, so I'm to comment it out for now, and if I run this program, let us see what will happen. You see, it caused an exception. Okay, so it's caused an exception. This is why we need to put this demo method within a try catch block. Okay, so this is why I have put this within a try catch block. So now if we run this program, you see that I don't have any error. My program runs smoothly. But so how do I run this program? How do I know that this program runs smoothly? Okay, so execution completed. Okay, see, execution completed. If I write something, okay, let me just write this statement, and if I see that this statement is printed over here, then we will believe that this execution completed successfully, right? So that means that try catch block worked properly, and my this statement executed smoothly. Okay, so let me explain this. Okay, so what happened? So here sorry, I have used a try catch block within my demo method, and the try block within demo method is throwing a null pointer exception. Okay, and the message it is showing just demo. Okay, and catch block, what it is doing, the catch block is just catching this same kind of exception, and it puts object, and it is throwing that exception object, null pointer exception object. Okay, so this is an example of throw using the throw keyword. Okay, so now we will go through another program in order to discuss about throws. Let me see if I have a program. Okay, so you see in this program, I have used throws keyword within that throws keyword must would be used within the statement signature line. Okay. So by analyzing these two programs, you can know how and where to use throw and how and where to use throws keywords. Okay. If I run this program, so if it is asking me to write an insert an integer 35, if I insert another integer, for instance same 34, anyway. Okay, so let's go to the next program, and this program shows how to design your own exception. Okay. Okay. So for instance, so actually designing own exception means designing my own exception class. Okay, so for instance I want to give my name of my new exception class as my exception, and my class name is my exception. And when you develop your own exception class, you must extend the exception class. So then when designing your own exception, customize or user defined exception, the exception class will be the parent class. Okay, so we need to extend it, and then we need a constructor. Okay, the constructor method will call is super, will use super in order to pass this message to the exception class. Okay, super, we know the super keyword, we use super keyword in order to call the parent class or base class constructor. So this super method is used to pass this message to this exception classes constructor. Okay, and then this is the definition. For instance, now let us see this program. Okay, and then for instance this is pretty straightforward, and for instance if we have x value and y value, and g will be x divided by y, and so then d will be if g is less than 0.001, then we are throwing a new exception using throw keyword. Here there's another use of throw keyword over here. So then what it will throw, it will throw my exception. There was not a built-in exception, but just I created here. I developed here, it's designed here. So this will throw an exception of this kind. So and then we will catch this kind of exception, and whatever my object, just I will use that object and that get message. Okay, the get message will be used. So it needs to be used in order to print the message. Okay, the message. And let us, and then finally block, what I'm putting the finally block is I can put another statement over here after finally, as well as these statements is out of programs. It's not terminated program. Let's put terminate over here and put executed successfully. So if I run this program, what you will see, my output, if you see that okay, so this is the line, this is the first line, is caught user defined exception. It shows, and then once it found, since it found this exception, so then it's showing me the result is too small, this line, and then this message is actually this statement showed this message. Okay, and then finally this statement is this statement, and this output output is this output. So I believe if I run this program, instead of running this program, if I debug this program, then you will easily understand what is happening over here. So let me instead of running this, let me debug it. It's the debug command. Debug command is, I'm using Mac, so it's command and F11. If you use Windows, then you will use control plus F11. Okay, and then so it is again asking me to switch to debug perspective. Okay, and I'll switch to debug perspective. And in the debug perspective, let me organize my window so that I can see value of x, y, and z. So now if I press F6, so I'm using Mac, so I will put Fn key plus F6. Okay, so then I have my z value over here is showing. Okay, so the value is this z value is very low, is that means x 1 to the power if -5, that means 0.00001. Okay, and then I'm pressing again Fn plus F6 because I'm using Mac. So then it is going to this statement, and then look at for the next where it is going, and it's going to this catch, and then going to this statement. You see, then it is going to this statement, and when it got this statement, is previous statement executed, is this statement executed. The line 26 executed, just executed, and then when I click over here, this exception object dot get message will display these messages. Okay, this is printed this result, and then okay, why it is printed this result? Because look at my in my exception class. In my exception class, I had key whatever the message I put in the within the my exception constructor. I'm passing this method to what? To the constructor. To the constructor. Okay, then passing this method to the constructor, that is called passing to its super constructor, that is calling and displaying by calling the exceptions class constructor. Actually, this is the message I'm passing. So if I run this is the last line. One more line I have to execute, just two more, one and last one more. Okay, it's done. Okay, so in this program actually I tried my best to give a demo about give an overview about exception and exception handling, so that in my book we have discussed in detail, and if you do Google search, there are a lot of online resources you can find better than this tutorial. So this is just a preliminary tutorial, and on YouTube and ICTR Guru online forum. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward to seeing you in next video.